Hello, everybody. Sorry for the delayed start, and welcome to the Kristen Rodana Reeve Foundation's Live Better series. I am Rob Girth. I'm the Director of Digital Media here at the Foundation, and today's show is Dr. Dan on what I like to call Beating Stress, Part 2. And Dan is really looking for this to be a conversation, and it's an incredible opportunity for the people listening in to really talk to Dan and get some really solid advice right from the horse's mouth. One-on-one. And to achieve this, we have a few technical details that we have to straighten out. So let me turn it over to our operator, Matt, for that.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to ask a question during the presentation, you can use the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment over the phone, you can do so by pressing the 6 on your telephone to unmute your line. Once your question or comment has been asked, please press 6-3 to remute your telephone line. Thank you.
And that is if you called in, so let's be clear about that. You have to call in to the 800 number, 800-931-1309, 800-931-1309. Is that correct, Matt? Do I have that right?
Yes, sir. That was 1-800-931-1309.
Excellent. Thanks so much. All right, so here we are. Dr. Dan, I got to tell you, I was working in my quiet time over the last month. I discovered a secret, and that was why men do spend so much time in the bathroom. I never realized it, but
this might be overshare here.
but that's where I could get quiet time. That wasn't like before bed where I would fall asleep. This was like quality time with, the lights not too bright and had a nice place to sit and and no one bothers you. So I did do some of my quiet exercise time.
Well, before I ask you how it was, I just want to say this to you, Rob, that I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for putting that image in my head.
Forever.
I'm not going to sleep well tonight.
Sorry about that, everyone.
So tell me about the quiet time, Rob.
Well, it was first it was a little scary to think about spending time with myself, but it started out, like each session would start out a little bit busy and, lots of things bouncing around, and then as the time progressed, and usually I could get like 15 minutes, to be honest, like 15 minutes, but as that 15 minutes progressed, and then as over time, as I practiced that, I got past the bouncing around stuff much quicker.
And how did you do it? Like, what were you doing though during those quiet times? Were you monitoring your breath? What were you doing with your attention?
Well, you had mentioned about listening to yourself breathing, so that's what I tried to focus on. And for the most part, I would try to keep my eyes closed and just sit comfortably. And sometimes I would sit on the floor, on the carpeted floor, to be clear, even though there's a nice seat elsewhere. But yeah, and just breathe. Just focus on breathing.
So what did that do to your mind body? Where you find your mind was able to calm down?
Yes, and I could find myself to relax, and by that what I mean is I could sort of take an inventory, and like suddenly I realized, well, geez, you're making a fist. Why don't you try to open your hand? It was, I could kind of inventory what was going on and just sort of really focus on something, a part of my body, and relax it.
All right, so here's the deal. During the day, we could be making a fist and not know it. And not a literal fist, but we could be clenching our foreheads, tightening our shoulders and neck. If we can feel it, we can have extra gastric juices in our belly and not even notice it. And that's where things get difficult, because so much of our lives we don't notice. So, I just did a show, Rob, on with a fellow named forgot his name. He wrote Buddha's Brain, and his most recent book is called Hardwiring Happiness. His name will come to mind in a minute. But what he said, he's Rick Hansen. He's a neuropsychologist. And what he says is our brains, our primordial brains, are hardwired to remember negative things and to forget positive things. He says negative experiences, our brains are like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive experiences. So we go through our day and we tell ourselves we're miserable or we're in pain and sure, when something goes wrong, that gets reinforced. But what we don't notice is a momentary pleasure when we look out the window and say, wow, look at those colors. Or when we put food in our mouths and we say, boy, that tastes good. But it's a millisecond, and at the end, and we have many, many, many of those experiences throughout the day, but at the end of the day, we don't notice any of them, we don't remember any of them. We've got Velcro for the negatives and Teflon for the positives. And I said our primordial brains, the reason for that is because if we didn't have our scanners out and worrying about the negatives and remembering the negatives, we would be lunch for somebody, the mountain lion or the mastodon or whoever. So we've got to have those scanners out and remember the scent or remember that the mountain lion likes to hang out here. But today we don't need that as much. But our brains are hardwired. But that can be changed. Wiring in the brain can be changed. And that's what I was talking about last week, is wiring in the brain can be changed. And that's what this practice of meditation, look, it's nothing formal or fancy. You don't have to sit on a cushion for a half hour a day. You just have to wake up to your life. And I say it's easier said than done. I am curious here. I'm running out of breath. I'm curious if anybody has any questions or wants to join the conversation.
Matt, do we have anybody on the phone line?
We do. We have two participants on the phone line. Again, if they would like to have a question or comment, they can unmute their line by pressing 6 on their telephone keypad.
Go ahead. Let's see who's there. Don't be shy. Speak first. We'll give the other person a turn. Don't worry.
I got a question.
Good.
It's a technical question. So all of those stories, all of those people that are there,
right?
Are they able to hear?
Yeah, everybody's hearing, but if they want to talk, they have to dial into 800-391-1309.
391-1309.
Right.
And then what do they do?
And then they'll just unmute their phone, and they can talk. It's that easy. Just hit 66 and you'll be unmuted.
So you and I, Rob, are going to be hanging out next Saturday. Right?
Yes. Our caregiver conference.
And I want to talk about that. Why don't you talk about it first.
All right. Where's my official calendar? On the 16th of November, a week from Saturday, in Philadelphia, we will be holding a caregiver conference. The Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation is doing it in cooperation with Ingalls House, which is a Philadelphia nonprofit. And we have room for 200 people. And I'm not sure what the latest number was, but last I looked, we definitely have a few more seats. It's a very inexpensive ticket to just stop by and spend the day with Dan. And wow, I don't have it right in front of me, but Michael, what's Michael's last name?
Michael Bain.
Michael Bain from the University of Pennsylvania, and both of you guys are going to talk about mindfulness.
Well, mindfulness for caregivers and caring for caregivers. And
yes.
I'm going to be talking about the idea of disease. And I'm going to post what I mean by disease, because I would imagine everybody listening is experiencing this kind of disease that I'm posting now. Dis-ease. And if you weren't experiencing dis-ease, I would imagine you wouldn't be listening. And, of course, what's the opposite of dis-ease is ease, E-A-S-E. And that's what we're looking for in our lives, right? Especially caregivers, but all of us, right? We're looking for some respite, a sense of peace, on a visceral sense. It's when our body goes, I don't have to worry anymore. This feels pleasurable. This feels good. This feels whatever. Ease. So, what is it? And how do we get it? Well, this is where the practice comes. I mean, if Rob Girth can find it sitting on a toilet.
Why are you torturing people?
That's a different kind of sigh we experience. But it's there, and it's available for all of us. It's in the small picture, in the moments. Nobody has a life of ease, or very few people. Nobody has a life of it's not stressful, ever. We all have ups and downs. We all have areas of pain in our lives. Ease is something, first of all, we can experience moment by moment. So let me encourage all of you, if you are listening, to just not do anything for the next 30 seconds and just rest and listen to my voice. You can keep your eyes open and glance softly at something in front of you. You can close your eyes. But just listen to my voice, knowing that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to go anywhere. That in these next few minutes, nothing's happening. Nothing at all is happening. You are here with kindred spirits. You're listening to a voice that's gentle, that's caring. And here you are, just breathing and doing nothing. And I would love any of you, all of you, just to type in what that moment, what that millisecond was like once you were able to let go. Might be pleasurable, might be a relief, it might be nothing. But I would really love to hear from all of you. A sentence or two, a word, whatever you like. But Deborah said, it's calmness in my head. And I think you nailed it, Deborah, because that's where the tension is. That's where the tension is. It's in our heads. It's what we tell ourselves. Before we went on live, I don't know about you, Rob, but I was feeling great stress. I had technical difficulties, that's why we were late. And I was having trouble logging on, and I was looking at the clock, and I was starting to get a headache. And what's stress? Stress is when we try to make the moment we're in different. When you're in a traffic jam, you get all stressed because you're trying to make that traffic jam go away. You can't. Stress is, you can't make this moment different. You just can't. And in that moment, Deb, in that moment, you weren't trying to do anything. It's just letting go. And that's what Rob did. And he just sat there and just let go. Just let go. Let's see what Roxanne said. I'm going to have to practice a whole lot more. What I experienced was a tiny glimmer of possibility. Well, yes and yes. You can achieve a stress-free life if you practice this. It's estimated for between 2 and 3 lifetimes.
Excellent. I'll get started right away.
You're damn right. That's the deal. Get started today. Look, what we're doing, Roxanne and all my friends, what we're doing is retraining our brains. We're retraining our brains to be reflexive as opposed to reactive, to get our brains out of crisis mode, to calm down our limbic system, the big emotions, to calm it down and have it be less reactive. So we are rewiring our brains, and it's like learning to play a musical instrument, or difficult music, a sitar. You know, you're not going to be good at first. It's going to be clumsy, and it might feel good or sound good for moments, and then it'll be frustrating. But it really, retraining your brain is like learning to play a musical instrument, knowing or having faith that there's going to be beauty at the other end. So we'll try another exercise later in the hour. But I'd love to hear from others or anybody who wants to join the conversation. If you guys are making me do a monologue now, you're killing me.
Now we know
okay, we won't make you do it all alone. This is Deborah. I've wanted to talk to you for ages, and so now I will.
Good, and you just saved me. I can catch my breath and put my oxygen mask
Well,
on.
that's the thing is we can't. I know it gets hard for my mom when she's trying to talk. She gets tired out. So
I don't get tired. I just run out of ideas.
You run out of breath, and that's what happens with her. I am a caregiver, although I'm not actively taking care of my mother. but I did take care of my mother-in-law who had Alzheimer's, and she has passed now, but I still work with a support group. And what you were saying about dis-ease in your body is so important, because as caregivers, we feel like we have to be caring 24 hours a day, every day. And being able to take some moments throughout the day where you take a deep breath and you separate yourself from the chaos that seems to be around you is so important. And people always think they don't have the opportunity to do that. But there was this one wonderful gentleman in the group who said that he took an awful lot of trash out to the garbage can. Because whenever things got stressful in the house, he would just look at his wife and say, I need to take the trash out. And so he'd take the trash out, and he'd have his quiet moments for himself at the trash can. And then after he had gathered himself back together, he'd go back into the house. And because of my medical problems, Rob, that was what I would say is, I need to go to the bathroom. And I'd find the farthest bathroom from the room she was in the nursing home to go to. And the whole walk to the bathroom and the being in the bathroom and the whole walk back would just really help me reset my mind.
It's a great imagery. You know, I'm told by my rabbi that the most important holiday, according to the Old Testament, the most important holiday in our religion is the Sabbath. It's mentioned 26 times, he tells me. That's the most important. That's what we have to do. We have to honor ourselves, our fatigue. We have to honor how hard we work. We have to give ourselves rest and respite. We have a responsibility to honor this body that we have, to honor this precious life that we have.
It's so important, because if we don't, then as caregivers or as the patient, we are not helping each other. When a caregiver is so stressed, they lose the ability to be patient. They lose the ability to do the caregiving out of a place of love. And the patient loses the ability to be patient, and they lose the ability to be an enjoyable person to take care of. And so many people are going to have to be doing family caretaking without paid help. And family dynamics are so touchy anyway, but they're going to have to learn how to be able to do that together in a loving and in a family way. And you can't fire your family. You're going to have to find ways of doing it together in a peaceful way. So they all need to learn what you're talking about and what you're going to be doing next weekend.
Yeah, I was a caregiver for my wife. It was early in the marriage. She had a malignant melanoma, and she had to have chemotherapy. She was quite ill, and our babies were 1 and 2 years old, respectively, and I had this new job and a very big job, and I was a 29-year-old man, boy, kid, and I was still in a postdoctoral program for family therapy. So, I would race in the morning to get the kids up and out and ready and to their daycare, and then I would race to the hospital to see Sandy and be with her for a couple hours. I would race to work, then I'd race home, and you know the day.
Yes.
And I went to visit my supervisor in my training program, and she said, "How are you, Dan?" And I said, "Well, okay." I said, "Sandy's doing this, and the kids are doing that." "Oh, no." I said, "How are you doing?" And I just started to cry. I must have cried for 20 minutes. I didn't even know how I was doing. Just that one word of kindness enabled me to know how I was doing. And, you know, that supervisor, we have that inside of our head. You know, it's, we can be that kind of kindness to ourselves.
Yes, absolutely. And learning to be honest with ourselves and ask that question to ourselves of how am I doing, and being able to be honest and say, I'm not doing very well today, or I'm not doing very well this week. And then hopefully having somebody in our lives that we can talk to about that in a positive way, who's not going to be critical or not going to respond in a positive way. I'm very fortunate. I have a really good friend who has MS, and I have medical issues like fibromyalgia and interstitial cystitis. And we have learned that the best way to help each other is to call the other one and say, please tell me how awful and horrible your day is today so I can feel better about myself. And it works beautifully for us. And then we end our day talking about my mom, because she's like our standard of our life is not that bad at all. And so I think having a friend like that is something that also helps to be able to give yourself perspective, because I think the biggest thing I've learned being around all kinds of people, and this comes with maturity and age, is that every person has a story. And no matter how grumpy the cashier is at the grocery store, or the person is in front of you in the car that's not driving fast enough, every person has a story. And most people's stories are much more complicated and difficult than you could ever imagine. And so to be able to just pretend like anybody who annoys you has a worse story than yours sometimes gives you perspective so that you are more patient and you are more giving. And the crisis that you think you're facing, unless it's something where it's going to have an end result in death, there aren't any crises anymore. So if you're late getting on because of a thing that's going on with what the hookups and stuff, it's just no big deal. It's not bad to be late for a doctor's appointment. There's just really nothing that's that big of a deal.
Yeah, let me come in here, because you're bringing up many good points, and I really appreciate your calling.
So I will let you go now.
Okay, thank you. But I mean, you know, one point she brings up is the idea of being with kindred spirits, and you know, when we are isolated, you know, our brains are social organs, and isolation really harms us. It harms our brains, and that's why things like this are what we're doing now is so important. But the other thing is what I implied, and I think what Deborah also might have implied, that what we're talking here is self-compassion, not doing anything better or even doing anything different. And the stress of caregivers often is other than the obvious. But when we expect ourselves to do something we can't do, that's a surefire way to burn ourselves out. when we expect ourselves to do something we can't do. And that's not just with caregivers. That's with so many people I know. They tell themselves, well, I'll be okay when this happens, or I'll like myself when X, Y, Z happens, or I'll give myself a break when I'm able to do. When? When does life start? When does kindness start for yourself? And how? You know, damn well you're doing the best you can. You can't do any more than that. And if you encountered somebody you loved who was feeling the kind of dis-ease that you feel, your heart would open. You wouldn't push them to do more. Your heart would open. You'd probably say something like, here, come, rest. Let me get you a cup of tea. I'm sure you would. But we don't do that for ourselves. We don't do that for ourselves. And often, you know, it's kind of like Rob suggested, or even, you know, Roxanne, when she said a glimmer of possibility. You know what happens? Sometimes we sit down and we stop doing, and we open our hearts to ourselves. Sometimes I just cry. And I didn't even know tears were in there. I cry because when I stop and slow down, I realize that I'm suffering. My body is so tired. I'm so tired. I cry because I'm suffering, which makes me feel much better because I can be kind like that to myself. If anybody else wants to join the conversation, do we have anybody?
Ladies and gentlemen, as a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment over the phone, just press 6 on your telephone keypad to unmute your line.
Okay. All right. Rob?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Bill, I'm calling from Connecticut. My wife's quadriplegic for 7.5 years, and I have plenty of help, but I am her primary caregiver. We both are physicians, and we had to retire because of her accident, which was in '06. And I think that we thought, of course, things would be better, and we were more positive in the beginning, and then my wife sustained a number of complications which are expected, hospitalizations for decubiti, for urinary infections, and most recently sepsis. And it's been, we are each other's best friend, and we do talk about things, but it seems that you reach an impasse when both of you become discouraged, and you can't, when one of you is more positive or can be more positive, that's great. But otherwise, when you both start being so negative, it's very hard to get out of that state of mind. And I mean, I realize that certainly the best thing for us is socialization. And I think our experience has been, I wouldn't, and I distinguish, I would make a difference between depression and just being discouraged.
Right. Right.
I think being discouraged is a perhaps more normal or acceptable way of looking at things, but it takes a lot of not only soul searching, but pushing yourself to do certain things to get out of that sort of decline.
So can I ask?
That's what we're having problems doing.
Okay. So when you're feeling this dis-ease, this sadness or despair, whatever you want to call it, what would happen if somebody who cared about you came up to you and put their arm around you and said, Bill, what do you need right now?
Well, I think that probably the one thing that most people do is, oh, everything's fine. You know, it's sort of a
but I'm not going to
denial. Yeah, I don't know when that, because I have to be strong for my wife. She has to be strong for me. So you let your guard down outside of yourselves. It's really more difficult.
All right, I'm asking you.
I know what you're saying, and yes, that's a very necessary thing.
I'm asking you to do both of us a favor right now. And for the moment, just for the moment, let your guard down. Look inside and tell me what you need at those moments of despair and exhaustion. What do you, Bill, need? You.
Well, rejuvenation of spirit, someone else to appreciate what I'm going through, and I think that's probably the same with my wife. Someone else to to share those.
Do you have someone outside of the marriage you could turn to and say, I'm exhausted and everything looks gray right now?
I don't feel comfortable doing that, I guess.
Okay. All right.
That's all.
No, it's all right. Don't do something you don't feel comfortable with. My God, that makes things worse. So, when you feel that, you suffer, yes? Let's get out of your head. Even though you're a scientist, a physician, get out of your head for the moment. When things feel gray like that, you suffer. Your mind suffers, your body suffers, your spirit suffers in that moment, yes?
Yes.
Could you say that to yourself? I am suffering right now. Not right now, but I mean when it happens.
Yeah.
And could you follow up with 3 words? I need care. I need care right now. And the woman across from me is too weak and too tired to provide that. It has to come from Bill.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned last time, what I do often is when I feel that kind of fatigue, that kind of exhaustion, I sometimes go by myself, always, and just put my hand on my heart or touch my cheek with kindness. feel my heart suffering. In the moment that heart might feel broken, just hold that man with kindness. For everything you do, Bill, for everything you try to do, for all the work you've done, for all the love you feel, for everything you've lost, feel kindness for this good man. Not entitlement or self-pity or any of that crap. Simple kindness for that person. Is that outside of your comfort zone?
No, that's not outside of my comfort zone at all. I can see that, but I also see the other point to reach out, to confide, although it may not be to the same degree that you're suggesting.
Right. Right. And listen, I don't know about you, but in addition to being a sensitive, compassionate psychologist, I'm also a guy. And, sometimes I like to reach out and not talk about it. Watch a football game with some guys and just be shallow-minded, just with people who know I'm suffering, and we can just sit there shoulder to shoulder as friends. So that's another way of taking care of yourself,
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Can I ask you one more personal question?
Sure.
How are you feeling right now? What emotions are you feeling right now as we talk?
Oh, just pretty level. Not, certainly not feeling very sad or
Yeah.
I mean, I feel that you've heard what I'm saying, and that is comforting.
Yeah, I got to tell you something, Bill. Your voice sounds different than it did in the beginning of our phone call. Your voice was more in your throat in the beginning of our phone call. Now it sounds like it's deeper in your chest. Just an observation.
Well, that's interesting. Thanks.
So, Bill, thanks so much for your call. And thanks so much for being involved with us.
Thank you again.
Take care of you. So, Sharmi wanted me to suggest anything on the role of yoga meditation to beat stress. And contrary to the title of this talk, I don't want to beat anything, because we're going to lose fights when we start beating stuff. How do we live with the truth of our lives moment by moment? How do we live with some things that are unhappy? How do we live with pain, physical, emotional, social? How do we live with isolation? How do we live with anxiety and rumination and depression? How do we live with love? How do we bear taking in the beauty that's going on outside in this country anyway now, Sharmi, and the Central American states where it's just the fall season, the tail end of it is just magnificent. How do we bear all of this and hold all of it? Well, I've got a book coming out in March called The Wisdom We're Born With, Rediscovering the Joy of Living. And this is my first shameless plug of many to come. But the message of the book is this, that we are born with the ability to love, to have faith. Children have compassion. It's tested as early as 9 to 12 months. There's ways of measuring children's compassion. And they have it. They have, by the way, that background noise was me tipping my chair back because I'm in a little dysreflexia. Children have the ability for trust, for open-hearted trust, for awe, to look at a leaf and just be amazed by the colors. All that stuff is still in us. It just goes underground. It goes way down, and we forget that it's in there. I'm coming back up. I'm sorry about the background noise. We forget that it's in there. And we can train our brains to remember awe, joy, gratitude. We've got just a few minutes left, but do this now. This is going to be a 15-second exercise. Think of one person or one thing in your life right now that brings you joy. And as you think about it, just close your eyes for a minute and feel that joy in your body. Not just in your head, but feel it in your whole body. The delight you might feel. Where in your body is it? Just sit there, just for 10 seconds, and feel that joy. I would suggest to you that you can do that if you're awake and aware. You can do that 5, 6, up to 60 times every day. And that rewires your brain. When you see something that you know makes you happy or joyful or grateful, just pause there for 10 seconds and feel gratitude. Feel that positive emotion. All you need is 10, 15 seconds. You do that several times a day, and you begin the process of rewiring your brain. So, Charmy, I hope that answered your question about the role of yoga meditation to beat stress. We're not beating it, we're just opening our hearts to the lives we have and greeting them. So, Rob, are you there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were back in the bathroom.
No, here I can close my office door and pretend when someone knocks that I'm not here.
Okay, good. Yeah, I practice every day for a half hour. Yeah, it's like shaving. Part of it.
Well, it was, I heard the same thing in Bill's voice that you heard, and it was miraculous, the change. It's just taking the time to focus on what you were making him focus on, how his voice just changed, and he sounded like a different person.
It's not complicated. It's just kindness. Just simple kindness. We can do it for each other. We can do it for ourselves. It's just kindness. It's the easiest thing in the world. Just kindness. So,
well, I'll do my shameless plugs then. ChristopherReeve.org/Dr. Dan is where Dan is when he's not here. On Wednesdays, he is there. You can leave him a note or a message. So it's ChristopherReeve.org/Dr. Dan, I should say, Dr. Dan, DRDAN. And this, as soon as I get this saved and edit the heads and tails off it, it will be at Christopher Reeve /webcasts, WEBCASTS, christopherreeve.org/webcasts. So you can hear this, and you can hear part 1 if you missed part 1, and all the other webcasts that we do live there. And just to go back to the conference for a second, a week from Saturday is our conference that will for caregivers, our caregiver conference that will teach caregivers what we're talking about and what we're going to call mindfulness. And you can find out more about that at christopherreeve.org/mindful with one L, christopherreeve.org/mindful. It is $25 for the day. It's all day, includes lunch. And it's in Philadelphia. A couple people, we've gotten some great responses. People would like you to take this on the road. They haven't even seen it yet, and they want it to be in their town. And the other request I'm getting, Dan, is people were wishing that we were webcasting it, which is something that we did talk about. It was just a matter of expense, and this being the initial one, we're hoping to do this next year again, and we will certainly look into webcasting at that point.
And maybe the year after we'll all go out to Maui.
I'm thinking that's not a bad idea. Take it on the road to Maui.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And then Europe, of course, all the capitals of Europe.
All right.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Dan.
One more shameless plug, everybody. You want to find out more, communicate with me. I'm at drdangottlieb.com. And I do respond to emails.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. Thanks for being with us today. And Dan will be back here the first Wednesday of next month at 3 o'clock. We'll see you then.
All right.